Hey everybody, and welcome to The Breakthrough Effect. I'm your host, Jerrid Sebesta. I've had two successful careers. First, I was an award-winning TV meteorologist, and then a financial marketing strategist. I was living the dream, making good money, but inside I was craving for something more, something bigger. So I stopped deferring life and I started creating exactly the life I was searching for. I doubled down on unlearning old mindsets and creating big breakthroughs for me and my family. And now I'm bringing that same transformation to you. Let's understand the rules of this game. Let's get clarity. Let's stop chasing and start becoming. This is the Breakthrough Effect.
Nobody's born with good communication. It's a skill that can be learned. You and I both learned this stuff. And I want to make the point that anybody can learn these things. And you're not going to master it tomorrow, but you can today start plugging in simple things that take very little effort and see the transformation begin.
All right, today on The Breakthrough Effect, I am talking with Nick Calderone, an Emmy Award-winning journalist and former national TV host with 30 years of experience communicating live under pressure in front of millions who discovered the most crucial truth about high-stakes communication. You're not being judged on your best moments, you're being judged on how you show up when it's not going perfectly. As the founder of Calderone Consulting, Nick helps executives and leaders fix the rambling, rushing, and moment losing that happens when pressure hits, teaching them to communicate with clarity, confidence, and control on camera, in meetings, and when the stakes are high. Get ready for a breakthrough conversation that will challenge everything you think you know about communication under pressure and show you exactly how you need to show up with clarity, confidence, and when the moment matters most. Please welcome to the show, Nick Calderone. Nick, thanks for joining me today.
You're hired. And I'm taking you everywhere I go. Before I walk into a room, you're going to go. That was fantastic. I have tingles. I didn't think I was that impressive.
I'll be your hype man from here on out.
Yeah,
is that cool?
I love it.
I love it
For sure.
This is really exciting. You and I go way back. We've been working together. We worked together for over 20 years. You were on TV, on local news. In fact, we worked together on a station, the NBC affiliate in Phoenix. From one TV guy to another, I have to ask this because I always find the answers funny. When was a time that you remember where you just blew it, like you caved to the pressure and you just derailed, like on live television?
So there was a moment in the 12 News newsroom where I had been hurried all day long, and I was what was called a multimedia journalist. Basically, that just meant I shot, wrote, edited, did everything myself. So there was tremendous pressure on me every day. There was an afternoon where I had been assigned to, I believe it was a court case, and I never felt comfortable doing court cases. But there I was, and I come racing in. They had me live in the newsroom, and I had just filed my story. I sat down at a desk, the camera, 3, 2, 1, and I just lost it all. Everything went out of my head, and I fumbled through one or two sentences. The director downstairs could tell I was drowning, and they ran the package. And the second I heard the story running in my ear, I drop an F-bomb. Huge. I just go, ah. Well, that was bad because immediately the news director comes blasting out of his office and he's, get in here now. And he said to me, Jerrid, I'll never forget this. The only reason you have a job right now is because someone else did their job better than you. And he was talking about the audio engineer who had clipped my mic, and thank God that F-bomb didn't go out on live TV. And the reason that happened is because I wasn't prepared. If I would have taken 30 seconds to make sure I had clarity in my head about the one point I needed to make. I only needed to fill 15 seconds in a live intro. If I would have made sure I had that, taken a breath, put everything else, all the pressures of the day aside, and just written down the one point I needed to make for my audience that day, I would have been fine. And that's what happens. When you're under pressure, it exposes your structure. Or in my case that day, the lack of.
That's I find that really interesting. You know, a lot of people, they ooh and ah, you know, that I used to be a TV weatherman, you know, and I said, you know, honestly, it's not that hard. I mean, you're talking about, you know, anybody, I could teach you in 5 minutes how to talk in front of the camera for 3.5 minutes, and it's 70 and sunny, right? Yeah. Where the rubber meets the road is when it's all hitting the fan. And, you know, there's storms and flooding and, you know, from the Midwest, tornadoes and severe weather. That's where you really show, you know, who you are and what you have, right? So I love this conversation. I love where this is going already. You talk about owning the moment. Before we get into the tactics of how we speak with clarity under pressure, what do you mean by that, owning the moment?
I mean that communication is a skill that we all possess. And some of us have a better grasp on it than others. And I love the premise of your show of elevating your life. In my talks, I ask people, how many go to the gym? Sure. How many people go to seminars to learn things? Sure. How many people eat well for their health? Sure. How many people have ever worked on their communication skills? If I get a single hand, I'm surprised. And that is baffling to me because it's, in my mind, maybe it's easy for me because I've been doing this for 30 years, but in my mind, learning good communication skills is simple in the fact that you don't have to go to the gym and break a sweat. Basic communication skills can be learned a few minutes a day, and it takes a little bit of practice and it takes some work. But if you just pick a few things, how to work a pause into your daily communication. If you pick those different tactics and work on it little by little, you'll begin to master that. And that's how you level up. Think about every great communicator, right? You can think of a million of them. Think of the good communicators. They're typically very successful people. Think about very successful people. They're typically great communicators. So why wouldn't you, as either an aspiring professional, somebody who's looking to go to the next level in their profession, why wouldn't you stop, read a book, do some research on improving and empowering your communication? Everything you do in your daily business life, your daily life is communication. And if you can make that better, and if you can master your own message, you're going to get ahead faster.
I love that. I speak on this topic as well, not as much as you do, but the number one question I get is like, how do I stop from being nervous? Do you still get nervous? I'm sure you get that as well. I want you to touch on that question, but before that, I had to throw that one out there, otherwise I'd forget it.
Yeah.
But before we get into the tactics, right? Let me ask you one more question. How does somebody know that their communication is lacking? Not that it's ever like you've ever arrived, but what are some clues that people would experience if they know that their communication isn't hitting, and the people that are hearing them, it's not translating the way that it should?
Do you get action after you speak? Either in a board meeting, a presentation, an interview. When you're done and you walk out, you think, "Oh, I nailed that." Did you? Did anybody take action? Has anybody followed up? Did you make the sale? Right? There are clues to tell you, did your message go? You don't need to just tell your message. You need to make people care. You got to present the why. Why am I asking you to care about what I'm talking about right now? Know your why. And have clarity in your message. And when I say clarity, and it'll get to this question that you asked previously, you have to master what you're talking about. When you're going into a meeting, a presentation, boardroom, whatever it may be, what is your number one core message? If you had 3 minutes, like we used to in TV news, what's the one thing that those people need to walk out of the room with? And if they do, 15 minutes later, could you walk back up to them and say, what was my point? If they can't repeat that point back to you, you've missed. Your message needs to travel. If you're an executive, your message needs to make it beyond your corner office and out to the manufacturing floor. Or if you're a golf course general manager, you got to reach the back nine. You have to make it understandable for those seasonal employees to come back to you and repeat. Because when that message is clear, aligned, and actionable, Now you've got efficient communication and your business is running. You've got people under you that can make decisions without second guessing, without having to pick up a phone, without having to send another email. Is this right? Is this what you meant? Without having to have a meeting to clarify what the previous meeting was about.
It's great. It's a great point. Clarity, action. There was one more A in there. I missed it. Clarity.
So yeah, in my talks, I try not to be too woo-woo with it, but I call it communication aura. And that's what supports your core message. Is it actionable? Is it useful? Is it repeatable? And is it aligned, useful, repeatable, and actionable? That's the communication aura. And those are your talking points or your message points that support your core message. So when you can walk into a room and you have this locked in your head, and it comes from practice, and it comes from writing it down, and it comes from understanding what you truly need to relay to the person you're talking to. That's your core message, and that's how you support it.
Let's dive deeper in the intention. I always seem to ask a question and then go back a question. I want to get into that intention and defining that and the tactics and the strategies between, actual, pausing, voice control versus storytelling, framing, all of that. Let's get into that here in just a second. But again, just to address the elephant in the room, whether you're going on a Zoom call, sales presentation, maybe you're doing a public, actually doing a public speaking address in some capacity, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour. Biggest question I get is, how do you stop yourself from being nervous? What do you say to that?
I say rely on your core message. And that's, you have to really lean into that idea of knowing what you're talking about and believing it and mastering your core message. And that core message is going to change depending on the environment you're in, your audience. But if somebody hits you with a question that maybe pushes you back a little bit, that's where that pause comes in. Okay, you felt the hit. I need a minute. So take it. Take a breath. Calm yourself down. Pause a moment. Give yourself, your mind, and your mouth a moment to sync back up. And that's when you'll begin to fall back on that core message that you've developed, that you've worked on, that you've mastered. And your brain will say, okay, I hear that question. Not exactly what I want to talk about here. So let's put the train back on the tracks and get back to my core message. And you don't want to sound rehearsed or too that when you get into some of the media and PR training, you can tell when people have been coached and they have that coached sound. That's not where you want to go. You want to rely on your core message, and you will hit those moments where it's like, oh, I feel that I'm not quite prepared. But the more you practice this, the more your mind and your body will get comfortable. You've been on stage. I'm sure there are moments where you're like, oh, I forgot to bring up that point. The audience doesn't know. They don't have your script in front of you. So that's where you can say, just take a brief moment. Let your brain and your mouth catch up with each other, get synced, and get back to what you know.
That's a great point, and I love how you describe your mouth and your brain, because when I first started chewing TV, it took me about 2 years before my mouth actually got behind my brain. It was out in the lead and taking me down rabbit trails I didn't want to go down. And then the way that I tried to counteract that was to memorize. I was going through my slides relentlessly. That's also bad. By the time I got done doing TV 12 years later, it was interesting. I knew just what I needed to know. You know what I mean? Sometimes I needed 10 minutes to prepare. Sometimes I needed a half an hour to prepare for a 3-minute show. Sometimes I just needed 30 seconds to look at this, this, and this. Now I got it. Now I can bring it to the camera. And sometimes we can overcompensate. Where's that fine line for you where it's like you're prepared, but now you're too prepared and overcoached, so to speak?
You have to rely on the confidence in yourself. So when I was on Right This Minute, this TV show that we did for years, 11 years, nationally syndicated. When I first started that show, and the show was about the best internet videos of the day, I would bring an iPad to set with all of the notes about the video that I was talking on. Mm-hmm. And what would inevitably happen is I wouldn't be able to tell a good story because I'd lose my place. I'd try to look at the iPad, try and find my notes. That's not important. You're trying to craft a story. And this goes for everybody in business, even emails, Zoom calls. Engage people. Wrap your message into a bit of storytelling. And that's where you can. I eventually ditched the iPad and I got so much better. And I'm sure you had that moment too, where you ditched the notes and just got comfortable in knowing Jerrid and knowing what you know. It takes practice. You're not going to just jump up, and you can get better tomorrow, but it does take practice to master your own communication skills. And that's where I say it's like going to the gym. When you learn some of the tactics that make you better, practice them, work them into your daily routines, and little by little, you'll see this have an improvement on your communication. People will respond to you differently. People will see you as the confident, knowledgeable person that you actually are. In many cases, when you get asked to speak on something, they're coming to you because they already know you're an expert. Gee, I want to talk to Jerrid because I know he's a public speaker and he speaks on personal improvement and innovation. And so I'm coming to you. When they come to you, that's where you should lean into your confidence and go, I'm being asked to speak on what I know. Find confidence and settle into that. And that's where I believe you don't sound pre-programmed. You don't sound like you've been told what to say. You're relying on what you know.
Yeah. I can look back on some of the talks I've done, the ones where I showed up with 10 pages of notes versus the one I show up with some bullet points. The one with a few bullet points always is better. And you mentioned something too, and I think a lot of people struggle with this. They'll get done with a call or a presentation. I forgot to share that point. When you're kind of in it, it just wasn't meant to be. There was one time I did a talk recently. There was a huge section of my talk, like one of my signature stories, I forgot about. I didn't even realize it until after. I was like, I forgot that entire section. But I'm like, you know what? That particular audience, like I was jiving, I was in flow, and like it just didn't make sense. And that's okay, because to your point, the audience doesn't know any difference. So don't worry about it up there, right?
Right. Yeah. I really I'm fascinated by interpersonal communication more and more. As I've gotten older, I've realized the power behind being a solid communicator and the power behind truly knowing your expertise. We're all born, and it goes beyond your knowledge too, and having clarity in your knowledge. It also bleeds into presence. So you can have the knowledge, but how you present it is also a skill. And I like to say we're all born with an instrument. And that instrument's our voice. Learn how to play with it. You're not a singer, but you are in some cases, even in boardrooms and meetings, you can be a performer to an extent when you can use your voice and vary its tone and its pace and its volume. You want something to land. I've seen you do it on stage. And when you want something to land, you speak up, you raise your voice. There are lots of different tactics that you can learn to improve your presence too. And when you have that presence married with good clarity, that's where you level up. That's where you elevate who you are. That's where you notice people paying attention more. You get more opportunities. People say, gee, Jerrid, I remember you. You become more memorable. You get more opportunities because now somebody can see in you that you know how to make a message travel. That's important.
So, what I hear you saying so far, set a clear intention, whether you're doing a 30-second intro to a package on television news or a 5-minute presentation or a 20-minute or 30-minute keynote. The intention has to be set. utilize the power of story, right? And I would even take, start with the story. Don't start with your points. Start with the story to lead into your points. Then we get into the tactics. You were just talking about that. You mentioned tone of voice. Break down some more of these tactics, some like practical things that people can start either working on and or utilizing.
My favorite one is the pause. I call it the power of the pause because there really is so much power in that. Earlier, we were talking about the disparity between the brain and the mouth. There's science behind that. That's not just a metaphor. There's science behind. Your brain can process somewhere around 400 to 500 words per minute. A good speaker will speak at around 120 words per minute because that's around the speed that our brains can process information. So that's a big gap between what your brain is thinking and what your mouth can actually do. And when people begin to speak and they there's a lot of crutch words, you know what I mean? When all of that shows up, that's your brain and your mouth trying to stay in sync with each other. And if you notice yourself relying on crutch words, simply settle, pause. And it becomes uncomfortable at first because we all feel like we need to fill every possible silence. And you don't. You can let your message sink in. Give your audience, the person in front of you, give the person who's asked you a question the respect of a thoughtful answer. You show so much more authority by sitting there and going, let me give that some thought. Instead of jumping into an answer that you may not be prepared to give. So I love the power of the pause. And if I could give somebody something to practice today, that would be it. Learn to get comfortable with silences. It at first feels like this Grand Canyon void of silence. And there's a bit of nervousness when you just give it a breath. But when you realize that it's giving you power and you feel your brain and your mouth come back into sync and you settle and you're like, oh yeah, I know what I can say to this because you've given yourself a minute. That would be, and I'm kind of beating this point to death, but that's how important I think it is.
Yeah.
And the things you can do to practice this, Jerrid, set up your camera. Everybody's got a camera. Set it up. So many of us never see ourselves on camera. Put it on a tripod, rest it on a bookshelf. Make yourself a list of questions. You can go into one of the AIs. Give yourself 10 minutes on camera. And then put it away. Go back to it the next day. Play it back and put the camera face down. Don't watch yourself. Listen. Listen to yourself and listen and make notes on the ums, the uhs, the things that you're hearing that you may not like. Then flip it over, turn the volume down, watch yourself. What are you seeing yourself doing that you can improve on? And then watch it a third time with the audio and the video. That becomes your custom communication plan. I can tell you all the things in the world of how I would improve communication, but now you've just made yourself a custom communication plan. Look at your notes, pick one thing, and work on that through the week. Incorporate it into your daily communications, in your emails, in your phone calls, in your virtual calls, in your meetings. And you'll start to feel it gradually improve. Then the next week, pick the next thing down. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice.
Well, you hit on something that makes so many people uncomfortable, and that is watching themselves and or listening to themselves. But I'm hoping people listen to this and take Nick up on this offer, because that's when really things change for me. Through my career, it took me like 2.5 years before I could stomach watching myself and listening to myself. But I did exactly that. I would watch it with no volume, and then I would listen to it with no video. And the feedback you get is really incredible. And to your point, the pause, there was one talk I did recently, and I'm like, I'm going to tell this story and I'm going to say this thing, and I'm going to pause to the point where now it's making me crazy uncomfortable. Did it, went back and watched it, and that pause was like that. It felt like this incredibly long, awkward moment. And after you watch it, it's like 10x speed. It's 10 times as slow as what you actually think it is when you actually pull this off, right?
No doubt. And that's why
great.
you need to practice it and watch it. Because think of the authority in that moment. As an audience member, as somebody sitting in a meeting, think of the authority that conveys when you're looking at a leader, or you are the leader, and you feel comfortable in that moment to give out some information and let it filter through your audience's mind. That's incredibly fun. Look at Steve Jobs. Go back and look at some of his speeches that he would give. Jobs would be asked a question by some of his employees in these keynote speeches that he would do for Apple, and he wouldn't jump to an answer. Watch him. He'll sometimes take 7-10 seconds. He'll stroll across, he'll pick up a water bottle, crack the top, take a sip, and nobody looked at that like, boy, Steve doesn't know what he's talking about, or he must be lost. They looked at him like, oh, what's the oracle going to say next? Right?
Yeah.
He was a master at that. And that, I don't want to belabor the point. We can move on past this. But I think the fact that we're talking about this one singular thing shows the power of it. And it's something that can be practiced tomorrow. No, again, you don't have to go to the gym. No sweat off your back. Basically what I'm asking you, and you're agreeing, do nothing for 3 seconds, 4 seconds. Do nothing. It's the easiest thing you can do to improve.
I love it. Again, we touched on storytelling. We touched on intention. Now we've touched on voice control tactics like a pause. Talk about again, I get this. I'm asking you because I want to hear your opinion on it, because I get asked this a lot. What do I do with my hands? Even on a Zoom call, should I be showing my hands? Where should I start with them? What if I'm holding a clicker? Things like that. What's kind of your go-to answers to that?
My go-to answer would be fall into your comfort again. And I know when you do get comfortable in your clarity, when your message is here and you're beginning to master your message, this becomes second nature. And I'm still learning this now. The fine line between becoming too performative and being expressive. You can trip into a neighborhood where you're getting too on stage performative. I think people tend to overthink the hand thing. And when you realize the comfort of your message and you have practiced it and you show up prepared, this becomes second nature. Use your hands. If you want to make a point and you want to reach into the audience, go for it. I'm telling you right now, if you're on a virtual call that we're all have gotten used to now, it's so easy to get bored and lost. But if you're a person with a message and you're an authority figure, why not use your voice? Bring it tone and volume, and raise your voice and slow your voice and reach into the camera. I guarantee you those 30 people that have to sit through another virtual meeting are going to hear you. Your message is going to travel. It's going to land a lot better if you can be a little bit more expressive. The hand thing, I don't have a good answer for that. Do this one thing. The best I could say is become comfortable with your message, work on your presence, and I think this just comes naturally.
That's a great way to put it, because again, that should be a natural outflow of the message and the energy that you are giving out. Because really speaking and communication, that's what it is. It's not just words. It's a transfer of energy. You talked about being a little too expressive. I pride myself on a guy that uses every square inch of a stage, no matter how big. And there was one time I showed my speaking coach. I've got a speaking coach, and it's been incredibly valuable. And I showed him this one talk I did, and he said, don't be afraid to stand still for a little bit. Meaning, like, it's good to move around, but it's also more authoritative sometimes to stay in one spot, because it shows me that, like, watch what I'm about to say and listen when I'm not moving so much. And so I started to incorporate that immediately. And I watched it, not listened, watched it. And it actually looked more authoritative the less I moved at times. Not to say that you just plant, your feet in the sand, but mixed it up, so to speak. And I think that that's a good word as well, because I hear you saying that. Change up your expressions, your facial expressions, your movements, make them dynamic, and it makes your message translate into something more powerful. One thing that you mentioned in one of your recent videos, you talked about your eyes. Talk about that a little bit, like how you can communicate with even the look in your eyes.
It's fun to play with if you do have an audience. And when I say audience, I'm not necessarily talking about a room full of convention goers. Your audience can be a meeting of a few people. Your audience can be a virtual call. When you can connect with somebody, when you can be on a virtual call, and instead of looking at the monitor and the person, look actually into the camera, whether it be your phone camera or the camera on the top of your monitor, look at the people. When you're in person, looking around the room and finding somebody in your meeting or in the audience, and just a moment of connection, eye to eye. There's your pause again. You can look at somebody and have them acknowledge what you're saying. If you're nervous, you can pick a focal point in the room that can help calm your nerves. I like to connect with people, especially the ones who I may seem drifting a little bit or maybe not paying attention. I like to find that person, and I like to look right at them and re-engage them. Finding comfort in that too, and do it when you record yourself. Look into the lens, look into the camera, look around the room, practice those moves. That personal connection is always going to, if you're not used to it, feel uncomfortable at first. But that authority comes when you can make eye contact with somebody. It's immediately more authoritative. That's a terrible word. I'll work on that one.
You're making up words here. I like that.
I loved what you said, though, about the varying and finding stillness, too. Because there are moments in what you say where you want to convey some energy, and you want to vary your pace and your tone and use the stage or use the meeting room you're in. But you're right. There are moments where you want that point to land. Plant yourself.
Yeah.
Plant your feet. Try not to move around and wiggle and wobble. And those are the things that will be revealed when you record yourself. Oh gosh, why am I swaying back and forth? I look like a palm tree in the wind. That doesn't signal authority. That looks like somebody who's unsure.
Yeah,
Let's go back. Can we go back to story real quick? I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Go for it, because I want to. Let's dive into that one a little bit more.
Yeah, we cruise through story a little bit. I like to say when you talk story, use the 6 senses. And I always like to see the little bit of confusion in people. Wait, I learned in school there were 5 senses. There are. But when you can incorporate sight, sound, taste, touch, feel, and emotion, that 6th sense of emotion, work those things into your story. When you have data to give to a group of people, your quarterly report or whatever, you can get to the numbers. But what does that mean to either your staff or the people that are affected by it? What's the emotion that this data is creating? Start there. Does this quarterly report make your food taste that much better? Our cereal is so much more crunchy because we did this or that. When you're asking your audience to engage, go back with me. Let me take you back to this one time when I was in 4th grade. Walk with me down the noisy hallways, past the colorful bulletin boards, and into that 4th grade classroom where we closed our books for a day and did an experiment. Remember those days? That's the type of thing I'm talking about. I know you're good at it, creating that story. Now you've got people invested. You're painting a picture with those words. That's when you really begin to see people lean into what you're saying. It's fascinating to think Netflix, all these movie studios, they'll spend billions of dollars on creating a TV show, a movie of people flying through the air and the Hulk punching somebody across the planet. When you sit down and you watch a really good speaker, isn't it fascinating to see a room full of 200-300 people captivated by no more than you, Jerrid, up on stage? Maybe with a few slides, maybe not, but you've got their attention and they're into it and they're listening, and there's no special effects. There's no sound. There's nothing. It's you. It's the oldest form of entertainment. An orator showing up to deliver a message and painting a picture, telling a story. Now weave your data. Now weave your information into that. You'll hold an audience and work that into your emails and that stuff too. It doesn't have to be in front of an audience, so to speak. I love this stuff. I'm fascinated by all of it.
It's no surprise why we kind of landed in the communications business, because I find it intriguing as well, because it really is an art form, and when people get this, when it starts to click, and I hope that people listening and watching it, something has clicked. It doesn't make communication scary. It doesn't make that presentation as scary. It becomes an art form, and actually, I love the word playful, and you touched on it. Don't start with the data, start with the story, and share the story. Let us experience the story. And again, when you become playful with that, those are those magic moments on stage that really, by the time you get to the data and you get to the point while you're sharing the data, now you got them. Now they're bought in. And to your point, which is the whole reason of the show, is owning the moment, not caving under pressure, and making sure that you're communicating with clarity and confidence and authority. Nick, we're just about out of time here. I want to give you one last question here, and then we'll land this plane. And this is a very typical question I end my shows with, but if you could reach out into the camera and the microphone and install one belief system into people listening when it comes to this idea of communication, what would it be?
Nobody's born with good communication. It's a skill that can be learned. So meaning anybody out there listening to us, these guys have been on television for 30 years or doing this, speaking for 15. That's why they're good communicators. You and I both learned this stuff. And I want to make the point that anybody can learn these things. And you're not going to master it tomorrow, but you can today start plugging in simple things that take very little effort and see the transformation begin. So stop telling yourself you're not a good communicator. Get rid of that negativity that, I'm just not a good communicator, or I'm shy, or this. I'm sure you've seen it. So many people can make those transformations. And it is such incredible professional collateral to have in your back pocket to improve your communication, and you can learn it.
Beautifully said, my man. In fact, as I was learning some of these concepts you talked about today, it was when my kids were young, and I was actually reading to them every single night. And so I would start to get playful with the pitch of my voice. Yeah. And that was a skill set that was developed because I was reading children's books. And there was something special about children's books because they rhyme, and there's a rhythm, and there's a cadence to them. And it gave me a platform to be able just to play with the dynamic of my voice. And again, I take it everywhere. To your point, you are literally, even on this call, doing the things that you are talking about. And again, to bring the point home, what a powerful tool to have in your back pocket as a communicator, leader, somebody who's trying to take their game, their business, their life to the next level. So Nick, I appreciate your time today. Dude, we're out of time already. Where can people find you, get engaged with you, and connect?
Yeah, nickcalderone.com. Very simple. It's easy to find me, nick@nickcalderone.com if you want to email me. I get such a thrill out of seeing the transformation and seeing people come back to me and say, that was easier than I thought, or I did it, and I got the next job, I got the promotion. So it's fun. It's fun.
Love it, man. Great stuff. Great to see you, dude.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show. Thank you.
If this conversation sparks something in you, don't let it fade. Please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform. Don't forget to connect with me online as well. Follow me at Jerrid Sebesta on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, or dive deeper at my website, jerridsebesta.com, where all my free trainings and resources are waiting for you. And remember, stop chasing the life you want and start becoming. This is the Breakthrough Effect. We'll see you next time.